Welcome to the No Notes Pod. It's episode 1. Got Flex here and Chenny. We've been friends for a long time. We've done a few podcast episodes on some friends' pods, but never done our own. So excited to get started with this one. A little bit about myself. I'm a big sports fan. I like soccer, football, basketball. Mostly followed the Boston sports teams, but also a big Chelsea fan. And shout out to my Blues today. They won the Conference League. And also finished in the Champions League spot this weekend. So shout out to them. And then we've got Chen, who I will let you fill in a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Flex and I really became friends over a bet that was made during the 2016 NBA season. We don't have to rehash what that bet specifically was, but very similar sports interests. I'm more casual NFL now, totally casual, but also a Pats fan, but very casual. College football, diehard Ohio State fan, love LeBron James. So I am a self-proclaimed LeBron sexual, debated Skip Bayless over his legacy. So I'm willing to die on that bronze sword. And we're currently Team Lakers. And then for everything else, I mean, Boston sports. So I have a pretty terrible fandom of teams, but I really don't care. And yeah, so we're here to just shoot the shit about sports and just kind of everything, right?
Yeah, not a lot of note taking, not a lot of prep. That you can listen to a ton of pods that have a ton of stats and hours of producing and work that go into them. This is more off the cuff, hence the name No Notes. But we both have watched a lot of sports together and individually. What's nice about starting episode 1 at this point is that the Lakers are out of the playoffs, so there's no real emotional ties for either of us. Or hot takes really from that side of things. We can talk about the NBA offseason, obviously, but more interested in this most recent game. What was that? Game 4.
It was game 4.
Game 4 for both series, but mostly last night it was the Pacers and the Knicks, and Haliburton had possibly his best game ever. So I think we should talk through what that looks like, what that series looks like, what the finals potentially could look like, and then a little bit about Haliburton, maybe where he ranks in the NBA right now, maybe some overreactions. I've definitely heard some today, so it would be good to get each other's opinion on that as well.
Yeah, what did you ask me the other day? This was maybe before game 3 when you asked if he was a what player? Was it top 10? Did you ask me if he was top 10 or did you say?
Yeah, I think we had a conversation about him in general, but this is before game.
This was before game 3.
This is before game 3. Okay, so yeah. So before game 3, I mean, he just had such an incredible playoff run. He had a good playoff run last year too, but I think he's taken that next step. Also, to be completely honest, I don't watch a ton of the Pacers. You watch more NBA than I do, but I haven't seen a ton of the Pacers, and he's been really impressive. He's kind of more of a throwback true point guard. He's got the size and the shooting, but it's interesting. You don't see that type of profile as much today as you did in the mid 2000s or even the 90s. So I think we were talking about if he was a top 10 player or moving forward, where you'd rank him and who would you take above him if you were, starting a team or doing a draft, something like that.
Dude, I have no idea. I want to overreact and say he's a top 10 player, but then I think about what the top 10 would be in no particular order, right? Jokic, Giannis. I'll put Giannis over SGA.
Yeah,
then too. SGA. And then who's 4? I would probably say Luka, dude.
Yeah.
Tatum, let's put out of the conversation because he's hurt. But I would have put Tatum there over Luka just because of the shape stuff and the defense.
Yeah, I would put Luke there personally. I think it's harder with Tatum for me. I'm a Boston guy, and obviously like the Celtics. Tatum's a tough one because there are a lot of games in the regular season where he plays like a top 5 player, but he also has a really good team. And come playoff time down the stretch, I don't know if you can attribute it all to him. Some of it's coaching. Some of it, I would say, is who he's got around him. He's got other good players that, take shots and have the ball in their hands at end of games as well. But he doesn't assert himself. And he, too many times, I think, has kind of flopped or given away the game at the end of the game. And so, yeah, I wouldn't have him top 5. I think Luka's got more of the clutch alpha dog gene. yeah, he's got limitations. He's not going to play defense the same way Tatum does. Tatum's an elite defender. But I think at the end of the day, if you're kind of cultivating a team, you want someone who you're comfortable having the ball in their hands with 2 minutes left, and that's Luka for sure. So he'd be 4 or 5 for me, easy. I'm not even sure I'd have Tatum 5. I wouldn't even have Tatum 5, to be honest.
Okay, so but like that next tier is what? It's like Ant, Tatum. See, I don't know if I have Ant there. I'm starting to think I might have Haliburton better than Ant. Now we can talk about that, but I'm trying to think. Okay, so that next tier would be
it'd be Tatum. No, the next tier for me would start after 4. I think Luka's kind of put himself in that first tier, not so much from this season, but if you look at the last 5 seasons, he's comfortably in the top 4. So that's the first tier, and then you've got Tatum, Ant. I think LeBron's in there somewhat from legacy, but also still just playing great.
He played great.
Yeah, so Steph's in there for sure. I think Steph's a little underrated. I think that showed through this playoffs for sure.
KD, where do you put KD? Because dude, KD's still fucking phenomenal. He gets hurt a lot more, but he's still phenomenal, dude.
He's a tough one. He's one of those guys who it's a little bit like LeBron, where you and even Steph to a degree, where you're ranking them a little bit on legacy and a little bit higher maybe than where you'd actually take them. Like perfect example. It's like at this point, Ant can play 42 minutes a game, and these other guys can't. So you have to put that in his favor when you tier them and where they go within the tier. That has to be included in it, as well as the fact that he's not going to be as injury prone as a Steph or a LeBron or a KD.
So that next tier would be like just in the grouping, the eligible guys basically for the next 6 spots, and then top 10 would be like Ant, Tatum, LeBron, the 3 old guys, LeBron, Steph, KD. Then you probably need to throw Donovan Mitchell in there just off of what he did this season, although I don't personally have him in there. And then maybe fucking, I don't know. Simmons had some crazy takes. He was putting Mobley in there. That's ridiculous. So it's really those 6 or 5 or 6. I think Hallie's in there.
I think Haliburton and Brunson get like an honorable mention. I'm not as big on Brunson as some other people are. I've been kind of arguing. Yeah, I've been arguing in group chats about him, and he's super effective individually. I'm not sure he makes his team a whole lot better. That's the difference between he and Haliburton.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think he's got it. If he's not in the list, he's in that next tier, and he's at the top of that next tier. Wemby's in there. Wemby was kind of forgotten about because he missed the last half of the year. I would put Wemby comfortably in that tier 2 group.
So it's really like in the middle of it. So do you take Hallie over LeBron? Do you take Hallie over Steph? Hallie over KD? Hallie over Wemby? Tatum?
I mean, I'm definitely not taking Haliburton over Wemby. Wemby is at the top of that second tier.
Right, because he's also young. Yeah, so okay. So
he's also young. I mean, he's gotten forgotten about because he essentially missed the second half of the season, but he was going to win Defensive Player of the Year. He's putting up 25 and 10 and 4 blocks a game. I mean, he's a complete game changer. And next year, with how the Spurs will probably have multiple ball handlers on the floor if they pick, Dylan Harper in the draft, he could have even a better statistical season. So he's at the top of that tier 2 for me, for sure.
So that's where I'm like, listen, if you want to say Hallie's better than LeBron or better than Steph, I would still, I think, disagree. And I love Hallie. I've loved Hallie. You know I loved Hallie coming out of draft. I fucking love Hallie. I would still probably disagree, but I wouldn't argue with it.
I would take I would take Steph and LeBron over him. I think if you put Steph and or LeBron in this Pacers team, you just replace them in the line, replace Haliburton in the lineup. I think that they're right where they are with Haliburton. And
even with their style that Haliburton plays?
Well, I would say LeBron's just as good a passer as Haliburton. I would say they play differently, but LeBron's an elite passer as well. I don't think he has the weapons that Haliburton has, and obviously the Pacers play super fast pace, so it's just a different game style. I think Steph, I mean, he could definitely replicate the shooting. He probably doesn't replicate as much of the playmaking, but given that the talent that the Pacers have, I think, and just how weak the East is, they're both in the conference finals, heading to the finals. So I would personally take LeBron and Steph. I think more of a question from and Wemby's no question. So for me, it's more of a we're getting into the Ant Mitchell range.
I'd rather have him over Ant or Mitchell, bro. I just love guys that can play make. I'm biased to those guys. And maybe I'm probably jumping the gun with the Ant stuff because Ant plays great defense. But Ant's team defense is pretty fucking bad. And I've never I'm not a Donovan Mitchell like guy. I think he's a bit overrated.
I would take Ant. I think where they are in the Western Conference, they've what is this back-to-back Western Conference Finals for Ant, and he's young. He's taking this team as far as they can go. It's not like they have a massive talent disparity over the rest of the West. Or, I mean, obviously not against OKC, but even the rest of the West, it's not like those were the top two teams. It's really OKC and everybody else. So Ant is taking this team as far as they probably should go talent-wise, maybe even further.
Fair.
But what I'll say with Ant, too, is when I watch him, he's not playmaking at all on the same level Haliburton is. He doesn't really playmake at all. And that's why they've had to supplement some of that with Conley, which has hurt them in the playoffs, and they've kind of gone away from that more recently. And we were talking about this off air. I think Ant needs to have the ball in his hands and be a little bit
you want him to just be a full-time point guard.
I do want him to be a full-time point guard. I think that's the future with him. His three ball is so nice. And we were talking about kind of the differences between he and SGA, and SGA just has a full tool belt of scoring at all three levels. And Ant to me is more like crash the basket, go to the rim and throw down or take a three. And he's great at both of those things, but he needs to develop a little bit more. I think he'll do that if he has the ball in his hands more, and the playmaking will come naturally when defenses have to collapse on him and he can kick out for three and find guys in the corner. And they need to build the lineup around him a little bit better to help facilitate that growth for him. But the upside Ant has and just the raw tools, I don't think I can take Haliburton over him.
Fair.
Donovan Mitchell, I would definitely take Haliburton.
Definitely Hallie over. Okay, so Hallie's top 10 then.
For me, Donovan Mitchell is a really nice scorer, but he doesn't have the upside that I would need, say, from like an Ant, and he's also older. So it's what's his growth potential? What is he? What are we projecting out for him 2 seasons from now? I think he's reached his potential, and he's a really good player, and he was first team All NBA this year, and he probably deserved it given where the Cavs finished, but I wouldn't take him over Haliburton. I think Haliburton's more the heartbeat of the team. Is there anyone else we're missing that you would throw into this conversation, or at least would be in the tier? Is Brunson in the tier or approaching the tier worth a mention, or is there anyone else that we're
Brunson's worth a mention? Brunton's worth a mention, but over. I think we have our top 4. That's tier 1, and then tier 2 right now is some combination of Ant, LeBron. Now Tatum is redacted this year just because of the injury, but it would be Ant, LeBron, KD. Donovan Mitchell, Hallie, that's 5, and then we need one. Oh, and then Wemby. Wemby would probably be the top one after the top 2.
Wemby's my 5th guy.
Yeah, I'll put him as 5th
because he's projecting out. Even if he's outside the top 5, he's projecting out to be top 1, number 1 possibly. So it's just with that projection in mind, it's kind of like Tatum. We've removed him because he's missed the second half of the season. Tatum's probably gonna miss all of next year. I would have Tatum above Haliburton, obviously, as well. But we're talking about like active guys realistically heading into next season. I would say Brunson's on the list, but I don't think he's as high up.
So I would say then, all right, so if we have Wemby as clear-cut 5, then after that would be some mixture of LeBron, Steph, KD, Hallie, Mitchell, and then the people on the outside potentially looking in. Also, it's so funny. These top 10 lists piss people off so much because I read everyone's top 10 list. And if they don't I just get so mad at every list I see. But honorable mentions would be Anthony Davis, depending on health. I think Brunson. I don't really know who else outside of that would be there. I mean, who else is in the East?
Yeah, I mean the first
Kawhi?
First team All NBA was impressive to me, and then the second and third teams, I was like, there are some players on here who I don't necessarily rate at that level, but it's about availability. Kawhi, if he's healthy, but that's such a big if. I'm not sure we can put him in the group.
Yeah. So
that's too much of an if, and it's not even been an if the last few seasons outside this playoffs. He's been out. So yeah, I don't think it's fair to put him in the group.
So that's pretty much it.
As elite as he is, unless we're just missing someone, that's the list right there.
So I think he's top 10. I mean, maybe it's an overreaction, but I think it's a rolling because the top 10 is a constant it's just what it is currently right now. So I think currently he's in the top 10.
Yeah, I also think that it's recency bias too.
Of course,
if
100%.
if the Cavs are at full health and they beat the Pacers, it's a completely different conversation. We're probably not even talking about him being in the tier with Mitchell and JB and everybody else. So
yeah,
it's one of those things where, yeah, we're talking about him because he had an incredible game 4. He's had an incredible playoffs. Next season, we'll see. I like the Pacers.
Incredible though. I will say, last season before he hurt his hamstring, he was a top 5 player in the league. Like he was for that. There was a 2-month stretch to start off where he was in the MVP conversation. Then he hurt his hamstring. Then he looked terrible post hamstring, and I don't think he got right until even after Team USA because he didn't get any minutes during Team USA, and I don't really think he looked like fully even mentally ready coming back from that injury.
And they made the Eastern Conference Finals last year, right?
Yeah, but he didn't even play in half those games. Like he was Nemhard was the one who went off.
Yeah, Nemhard was the one that went off. Yeah, the Pacers have a good team though. That's the other thing with Haliburton, which is tough, which is why I opened with LeBron, Steph. Where would they take this team? Because having a Nemhard next to you, and then I really like Siakam. I know that he's had kind of a mixed career depending on who you talk to and his time in Toronto. And Neesmith's a good player, and Miles Turner again, always on the trade block, but kind of a nice piece. When I look at all these teams that need a big, I'm like, hey, he's an average big, but if you have a top 15 big on your team, like he's a top 15 big, technically speaking. I think that he's a worthy, a guy worthy of being on a championship team, depending on the role that you give him. But he can hit a 3, plays a little bit of defense, and is a big body in there. So. Yeah, I like to see. I think Rick Carlisle, along with Haliburton, I think Rick Carlisle is the one that's really going to come out on top from this playoffs. Yeah. Even if they get blown out by OKC, I don't think it'll matter. I think that he and Haliburton will have reached escape velocity on their legacy argument, if you want to call it that.
So you watched the game last night, Game 4.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of your takeaways from that game?
My takeaways were I don't think the Knicks can solve what the Pacers are putting in front of them. I think that the number one disparity in this series is coaching. Yeah, it looks like Tibbs is coaching from he's coaching the exact same as he was on those Bulls teams. He hasn't evolved at all. I don't like their rotation. I don't like that he sat McBride and he's playing some weird minutes. I get what I understand what they did with Josh Hart off the bench, but Landry Shamet, is he really a playoff guy? I know he likes to play 6 guys, 7 if he has to, and I understand why he started Robinson. And maybe they don't have the team to match up perfectly with the Pacers, but they have a lot of talent on the team. This is why I like Haliburton over Brunson, is because I look at OG Anunoby and I look at Mikal Bridges and I look at Cat, and I'm like, is this not the exact same level, if not better, of kind of your 2, 3, 4 option that the Pacers have? I mean, I would take Cat over Miles Turner.
Yeah, for sure.
OG versus Pascal Siakam. Maybe I give the nod to Siakam, but it's not by a lot. And then you've got Nemhart versus Mikal Bridges, or whoever you want to put in that next spot. I think
most people have Mikal, but I like Nemhart more.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Mikal hasn't lived up to the hype or even his performance that he had on the Nets. But that has to come down to coaching on some level. That's not just poor play. Because when he does take his shots, he makes a bunch of them. I think that the team is too, if you want to use the word, heliocentric around Brunson. And he's not a playmaker. So it's just, they've just got, it's single-minded, and it works when you have a guy like Luka who's just so superior to everyone that, you win a lot of those games. I don't think it works the same with Brunson.
Dude, I mean, listen, I agree with the coaching thing. I mean, the series should be tied. They blew that game 1 20-point lead. I guess you could say the Pacers blew game 3. They're up 20, so maybe that cancels out and the Pacers are just better. But yeah, I'm with you on the coaching. I've never believed in Tibbs as a coach. I just don't get why fucking organizations hire these guys where you kind of just know where you're going to get. And if their style has never gotten over the hump, I always just feel like it's odd that they hire them. He just seems like a guy who eventually, if they really want to win a championship, they got to get a real coach in there. Not saying he's not a real coach, but it's just dude, he he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing at this level right now, bro. I'm sorry. Like the adjustments that Carlisle's making and Tibbs, like, all right, first of all, I'm with you. McBride should play more. I felt like McBride played a huge role in that game 3 comeback. He kind of went away from Brunson last night, dude. He called all those end of the game plays for Mikal Bridges, which I thought was stupid because I'm like, if you're gonna bench Brunson because you can't guard, and like I think their net rating is better if it's just Towns and no Brunson. If you want to do that, but then play Brunson late in the game, then you have to let him shoot the ball. Like you can't have Brunson late in the game. Like, oh my God, it just makes no sense. If he's in there just for offense, then why are you not calling these last plays for him? Like that makes no fucking sense to me. Like have him shoot the ball.
I think I would have reversed it and done more like Mikal Bridges earlier in the game to give Brunson a rest to load up for the end of the fourth quarter run in. I like when you get Mikal Bridges open, he hits shots. I like him. I think part of his issue in New York has just been they've got a lot of mouths to feed. Cat takes a lot of shots. I think OG's preferred over him at this point too. So it makes him the fourth guy. And then, Josh Hart takes open shots, but a lot of times teams are leaving him more open than the other guys. So he has shots to take. I think Mikal's kind of the odd man out. And unfortunate for him because I think he's a good player, but they gave up a lot for him, and I'm not sure he really fits in this team. What I would say, 4
first-round picks for Mikal is crazy. I think we both said it at the time. We're like, that's an insane overpay. That's crazy.
I think the only trade I hated more was the Gobert trade.
Yeah, you hated the Gobert trade.
I just remember I called you immediately and was just like, we should be NBA GMs because this is boneheaded. But what I'll say about Tibbs, because I think we see it in other sports. I see it in soccer all the time. I think we see it in the NFL, is you're not always hiring to win a championship.
Yeah, true.
If you're an elite franchise or your team is there, you're looking for that guy that get you over the hump. But otherwise, you're just looking for a floor raiser. It's kind of like the Mark Jackson thing. It was he got you to a certain place with that Golden State team, and then you had to get Steve Kerr in to take you to that next level. But you got to walk before you run, and a lot of these teams are looking to make the playoffs or looking to get past the first round. And Tibbs is not going to take you to the promised land, but he'll probably win you a series or two.
That's a good point. He's competent. He's a competent head coach, and he's the best head coach they've had in the last 20 years, right? Like,
and he instills his values in the team. Like they play tough, they play defense.
They play defense.
It's that they're not going to wow you on offense, and they're probably going to run some guys in the ground, possibly deal with some injuries because of it. But this is the most excited I've in my lifetime from watching the NBA that I've seen people about the Knicks. This is the best team they've had in a long time. And I do think that they're underperforming given their talent. I will say that. I think they're underperforming, especially on offense. It's so much of just Brunson being incredible, scoring the basketball. And at some point, you're going to get figured out in the playoffs with good teams defensively. I mean, Neesmith's all over him. And they don't really have, like, I know you complained a lot about the Lakers, the fact that they don't really run an offense. The Knicks don't really run an offense. It's what can Brunson do for us?
Listen, I've been ranting about coaches, and people are like, fucking, these coaches know so much. And I just keep saying, okay, there's no, like, my thing is always, people always look at players and they say, oh, being a professional is so competitive, so it makes sense why NBA careers, NFL careers, soccer careers, whatever, are so short, because there's always talent coming in. I don't understand why you don't use that same type of thinking when it comes to coaches. Coaching, I'm not saying it's easy. It's really fucking hard. Most of these guys aren't going to be good. So I don't think there's anything wrong with cycling through coaches. I really fucking don't. And I don't think it's one of those things where you have to give every single coach a bunch of time to quote unquote figure things out. And when it comes to play calling, I'm telling you, man, most of these teams, I don't think they run plays. I think the coaches just pick rotations and they just tell guys to fucking play pick and roll. I don't think most of these teams run plays. It's just so obvious.
Yeah, I think at the highest level of NBA basketball, though, what I would say is a lot of times I think these coaches are implementing defensive schemes.
Yeah, they coach defense for sure.
They're coaching defense, and then they are letting their offensive superstar, whoever it is, kind of get out there, get a feel for it, and decide what's going to happen. Because when I see LeBron, I'm talking vintage LeBron, Luka, Jokic, like these guys, like they're essentially deciding your fate offensively. I mean, Jokic was not head coaching, but he was leading the offense during this. They do it. No,
Adelman's like a good
yeah, but you're facilitating that system through your superstar, and they're deciding a lot on the floor.
But I don't know what the Knicks' offensive system is. Your system can't just be high pick and roll. That's not a system. That's
right. But their system is essentially JB gets his, and everyone else will,
it's Brunson
suckle off the teat of the open jump shot because everyone's going to crash in on JB. That's essentially what their offense is. And what's crazy is that they stay in games from shooting. I mean, Cat makes some really good shots. I don't like him as a player, or like just his overall persona or personality or aura, whatever you want to call it. Just not my guy, but he makes some serious, like, tough shots. Yeah, and he keeps you in games. So yeah, I agree with you. It is weird that at the highest level they're not. You should have offense at least for the fact that Jalen Brunson and Cat are not going to play 48 minutes. So when they're not on the floor, what are we going to do? You should have that plan. Even if the last 2 minutes of the game, it's, hey, let's go to JB and just let him do his thing. But what's funny is that we've also seen that work the other way with the Celtics, where it's like, hey, let's give Tatum the ball at the end of the game and nothing happens. And it's like, what we could use right now is some scheming. And
yeah,
it's like, hey, more than just let's do a high pick and roll, get in the lane and kick it out to a 3-point shooter. Like that might not work for 48 minutes. Do you have anything else for me?
I'm with you. So do you have, with all that being said, I mean, I have the Knicks winning game 5, and I think Pacers close it out game 6. I think the Garden's going to be rocking so hard game 5. I mean, maybe Hallie just goes killer instinct and drops another 20-point first half and silences them, but I expect the Knicks to fucking take game 5, and then I think the Pacers close at game 6. What's your prediction on this? And we're filming this before game 5.
Yeah, we're filming this on Wednesday, May 28th, 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So this is before this is we can timestamp this.
Yeah.
I have the Pacers winning game 5. I think they're the better. I think they're the better team. I think they have their foot on the Knicks' throat, and I really like their mentality. Like as much as they have some talent, they're not the most talented team. They're not as talented as Boston or Cleveland, and I know you have to put injuries aside with that because that's a huge factor, especially in this playoffs. But for me, they've got some talent and they've got an elite mentality. And my feeling is that they don't want this to extend any further. I think OKC is going to put Minnesota down tonight. And so I don't think that the Pacers are going to want to go in to that series, having to play an extra game. So I think they're going to kill it in New York. And also watching the Pacers this playoffs, they don't care if they're home or away. It's almost irrelevant to them.
Yeah, they don't give a shit. That's true.
They don't care. So yeah, I think Haliburton's going to be hyped. I think their team is humming, and I didn't feel like the Knicks gave up at all, but I kind of felt like I could see a bit of the Knicks' belief waning at the end of that game.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think I've overrated some Pacers talent because I obviously wanted Boston to lose last year. So when Nembhard was going off, I'm like, holy shit, this guy's so fucking good. Also, as a Lakers fan, I've seen Nembhard hit just like ruthless clutch shots, game winners against the Lakers. So I've always liked Nembhard's game. He's been shooting like shit this year, but
Neesmith's been the guy this year.
But I think Nembhard's a point guard, so he's playing a role that he's not. That's not his natural role, and he's doing okay. Like he still defends and moves the ball and shit. But I think, dude, the Pacers have a ton of guys that are pretty fucking good. Like
the Pacers have a ton of assets.
That's what I'm saying. TJ McConnell's
they need to consolidate. So, yeah, TJ McConnell is nice, but I'm not sure you would get a whole lot for him. But he's a nice player. They have a bunch of assets. They need to consolidate into a better, just like 7-man rotation. They've got, because I think that they can go and move Mathurin and some of these guys who other teams would probably be like, oh, that guy's immediately stepping into our rotation, and upgrade your starting 5 or upgrade your 6-man off the bench.
Yeah, I have seen some trades. I don't know if they would want Rui or if he fits because
you try to fit Rui into every trade. You're like, man, I gotta get him with the Lakers.
Trade Rui for Ben Mathurin. Pacers fans are gonna be like, fuck no. But they don't even really play him. Like he played last night and he scored 20, but next game he might play 10 minutes. He doesn't even really get used. So
he's not a guy I want to rely on. He's probably due for a trade mostly because I don't think Rick Carlisle trusts him.
No, he doesn't.
And so if you're not going to be trusted in it often, and they're more in win now mode. I mean, they're building, but they're also in win now mode. So they could probably get a good asset back if they packaged him with someone else and some picks. You never know what you get. We're going to see. We're going to look. I told you this 2 weeks ago, a week ago. We're going to see some crazy moves this NBA offseason.
Yeah, but the funny thing about the Mathurin trust thing is one of the things he did last night that pissed people off. He had a good game. Was he committed this foul against Brunson, and that was just pure Brunson bullshit grift. It was literally in the backcourt, and he's playing physical defense, and he gets tripped by the guy screening him, and then Brunson flops, and then they call him for fouls. It was just one of those things where it's like Mathurin just got fucked on that play, and then now it just contributes to his reputation as like this guy who makes dumb plays and stuff like that.
And when the Knicks challenged it the other way, I think Miles Turner pushed someone into, I think.
Yeah, he pushed someone into Cat.
Into Cat, right?
Yeah,
and that got challenged and overturned. It was the same play. The officiating last night was abysmal, which brings up something else. I was watching this game, and one thing that really bothers me, I miss Jeff Van Gundy because no one calls out the officiating anymore. They want, and it's also with the SGA foul calls. The people on ESPN, TNT, whatever, they are buying into the product and they're pushing the product so hard that they're not being genuine. I mean, it's disingenuous, some of the stuff. Oh, this is such a great play by the players. Like, clearly he just foul baited the refs into a terrible call. I just wish that they were more honest and upfront because it's hard. I've told you this as well. I think the NBA product has taken a little bit of a hit this year. They need to clean up the challenges and reviews and how all that works in my mind. I hate how after every single out of bounds, all I see is players like it's like it's annoying because obviously you're lying and or there's a 1 in 10 chance that you are just right because there's a luck element to it as well.
Yeah.
But that
needs to get no game flow. There's no game flow. But you know what's funny? I think if it's Pacers OKC, that I would actually think that would be a good series. Like I think a lot of people would watch that series. There's a lot of exciting players on both teams. Like, I'm not fully on board with this. It would be bad for the league if that happened because Haliburton fucking talks a ton of shit. He's in the news a bunch. He's an exciting player, and then SGA just won MVP, and OKC has like a bunch of young talented players. So I feel like OKC has a bunch of buzz as well. I don't know. I feel like that would be a decent series.
I think OKC will sweep them. I think OKC will sweep the Pacers.
All right, so let's jump to the West. You think both of us don't want OKC to win? I don't think, even though you had OKC winning as soon as what happened.
I had OKC winning. I had OKC winning before the playoffs. Like when we talked pre-playoffs, we were like, "Who do you think's going to win?" I said, "I think OKC's going to win," but it wasn't this just inevitability about OKC or this extreme confidence that I had. I was just like, "There's no other team that really impresses me," and they were by far the best team this year. And I saw them live. And they've got the makeup of a championship team in terms of how they play and who they've got on the roster, but they're not this like all dominant all-time team who I think are going to create a dynasty or anything like that. But this is a weaker year and there wasn't another team that stood out to me. So I went with kind of the best team that I had seen this year, which was OKC. So yeah, I had them before the playoffs started, but I'm not taking any sort of credit. I don't think it was a crazy pick or anything like that.
Yeah. That series with Minnesota, obviously they're just much better. I feel like the one thing though, I'm not mad at Ant for last game where he didn't shoot a ton. Like obviously he should have shot more, but I don't think it's a mentality thing that everyone's talking about, which is to me, it's absolute nonsense. It's not a mentality thing. I think it's just as simple as he needs to add the midi fade to his fucking toolbox. Like you said, he's pretty much shooting the three, which he's gotten really good at this year, or right at the rim. But when SGA faced some aggressive coverages in game 3, and the few times, I was telling you this, the few times SGA did get single coverage, he didn't waste energy trying to ISO outside. He just said, fuck it. I'm going to go right in the mid post. I'm going to shoot a fadeaway. Maybe it's like a 42, 43% shot, but I can get it off comfortably. I know I'm not going to have to burn a lot of energy, and it's a shot that I can make. And he just hit a bunch of those shots to just stem the tide. And that's the difference. Like Ant doesn't have that in his arsenal, or if he has it, he's not comfortable enough going to it right now. He needs to get to that because those are the only shots he's going to be getting in games like this. That's the thing. I always say, bro, one thing that Kobe, he put up some crazy shot numbers, obviously, and you have your opinions on Kobe and stuff, and a lot of people do with efficiency. But I will say I'll give him credit for shooting a ton as your best player. Like, it does take energy and stamina to get up that many shots. Obviously, you want him to be efficient. So that's where Ant has to go next is like, dude, you got to be able to just get to the mid-range for me and hit 5 or 6, or just take 5 or 6 mid-range shots where it's one-on-one, and maybe it's not the most efficient shot, but it's a decent shot, and you don't have to burn a ton of legs for it. Like, because SGA shoots the fadeaway effortlessly. Like, you don't need to burn a ton of energy for the fadeaway.
I completely agree with everything you said. And, I was talking about his tool belt at the top of the show.
Yeah.
He has not developed any sort of mid-range game or kind of any moves that he can
like the mid-post, there's like no back down.
There's nothing. Like, but I'll say this of Ant. He is
23.
A freak athlete. And I think he will be an all-time three-point shooter. Like, I think he projects out to be crazy. Like way better than SGA and some of these other guys who they have an incredible game and more complete game. But I think Ant has the ability to just at his size pull up and shoot from anywhere, and he's only going to extend further out. But it's different than like a Steph or a Damian Lillard where they're smaller, and at some point he's going to extend out to a certain range where you're going to have to respect his three so much from so deep that he's going to be able to get a first step on you and just go straight to the rim. And then that's where the rest of the tool belt comes in, and that's where playmaking comes in, and that's where they need to surround him with guys who can hit open threes and complement his game a bit more. But he's still early in his development. I think with Ant, it's about how bad does he want it. He's obviously got a lot of confidence in himself, but I'm not sure that's always backed up with the best habits. I think a lot of that's natural talent and natural ability, which is true for a lot of these guys. So I'm not hating on him at all.
Do you think? I do agree. Like he needs to work on that part of his game. Another guy, a random role player that I was fucking hating on hard, and I think you were surprised, was like Dante DiVincenzo. And I listen, I don't have any opinion on DiVincenzo. I think he's genuinely a good role player, but dude, his decision making, I'm sorry, that shit, it's so bad. I was telling you, I can't believe they allow him to shoot some of the shots that he shoots. When he shoots open threes, I'm fine. I'm totally fine with him shooting open threes. He's obviously a great 3-point shooter. He shoots some of the worst shots I've seen. And I'm just not going to accept the bail of, oh, he's got to take those shots right now. No, some of those shots he doesn't need to fucking take. He does not need to take some of those shots. Like I'll watch quarters where he just takes early shot clock threes where he's not even open. He's 5 feet behind the line. And then he'll miss a rotation or commit a foul or then turn it over. Like he looks so sped up. I think some of those shots could go to Ant. Like some of those shots are not open shots that he's taking. So I think he's been kind of harmful for them. I know he had a bunch of points last game. I still just think overall he's kind of been harmful for them, dude. That just from what I'm watching, he's been harmful to them. And then obviously there's the Julius Randle factor. He's been fucking garbage this series. That's the Randle that I was expecting against the Lakers, and he just dominated the Lakers and dominated the Warriors. But this is the Randle that I was always expecting.
But see, this is my argument with Ant. I don't think his team's that great. I don't think their role players are that good. To me, they got through that Golden State series because Steph was hurt.
Steph was hurt.
But see, I think that's a plus in the Ant column. Like if you're looking at pros, it's like he gets a lot out of this team. I know they trade a lot for Gobert, and I know Randall's a name, and I know DiVincenzo's a solid role player. And I actually really like Jaden McDaniels. But
yeah, he's nasty.
He is a really good player. It's not a complete team. And I don't even think the team really complements him. Again, they've moved away from Conley, but earlier in the year and even into this playoffs, like he was playing a bunch of minutes. I just would do all that I could to get Ant on the ball as much as possible. And I think going into the offseason, maybe that's something that they look at, getting maybe a 3-and-D guy next to him that can do a little bit of ball handling, kind of like Jalen Williams, where he plays good defense. He's a secondary scorer. Obviously, those guys don't grow on trees, but I'm just saying someone who, like, they don't really play with a point guard because Kason Wallace comes off the bench for them. And I think OKC's kind of figured out, hey, we need to maximize this team by getting the ball into SGA's hands, even though he's not really a point guard. But just a primary ball handler. We kind of saw it with the Heat, like D Wade and Kobe with the Lakers. Like this isn't a new scheme I'm putting together, but they need to take that next evolution with Ant. Have him be that guy, even if you have someone else take the ball up the court, even if you have someone else have some playmaking responsibilities. They need a 1-2 punch. It can't just be Ant and Jaden McDaniels or Ant and Julius Randle.
So you would move Ant from 2 to 1, not say, all right, we need a different point guard than Conley, but keep Ant at the 2 and then put a true point next to Ant. You would opt for the build where you just say, fuck it, Ant, you're the 1, and then you're going to be the smallest guy on the court.
Yeah, Ant's a good defender, but I don't really want him doing a ton of defending. And I just think that, I don't know how many like great playmakers there are at point guard.
How many true? There's not even like that many true point guards.
Right, there aren't that many true point guards, right? And then of those guys, how many of them play great defense? So I'd rather just go in the opposite direction and go and get like a Lou Dort, who's not going to do any ball handling. He's going to sit in the corner and hit threes, but he's going to play some elite defense. Yeah. And then maybe you give a little bit more of the ball handling responsibility to McDaniels or Julius Randle or Dante DiVincenzo off the bench, whatever you want to do. But I think that the next evolution with Ant is to focus his game a little bit on expanding his tool belt. He's got threes. I think he'll continue to work on that and extend his range, which could be scary. He's got the explosiveness. He's a freak athlete. He needs to work on his mid-range. He needs to work on his post-up game. He needs to just add more. Like, the thing I like about SGA, right? And we were talking about the whole MVP is the best player in the league, all this stuff. This was offline. What I like about SGA is there's these little dots on the floor, like in his mind, just these little red dots on the floor, and he just gets to that spot, and it's an
automatic score.
It's automatic. It's like he's playing 2K, and he just knows once he gets into that flow in that spot, it's buckets.
Yeah,
Ant needs that in his game.
Yeah,
but he's young and he's not far away. So yeah, I would surround him with talent that can shoot, so that when defenses collapse on him or focus on him or whatever, you've got guys that can make open shots. The Conley minutes need to disappear. He probably needs to retire, but he's been a good servant for them. He's done a really good job for them. I think he's given them more than what they could have expected when they picked him up, and they've lost out on some other assets because they've traded for Gobert and made some other moves. But like Rob Dillingham and some of these other players that they've maybe kind of ushered to the side a bit. Terrence Shannon's gotten a few minutes here or there, but they need to bring in this next gen and filter in some more talent. And this team is not far off, but I could say that for like 3 or 4 teams in the West. So, it's possible they're a play-in team next year if they've screwed this up. Like they've got to keep their foot on the gas and be aggressive. But I could say the same for a lot of teams.
Could you start Ant and Shannon and then have McDaniels at the 3? Like, I think that's athletic enough.
Yeah,
obviously Shannon is young, but
yeah, I don't think Shannon's ready. I think Rob Dillingham is another guy. Like, they've got guys, right? But are they ready to play in the Western Conference Finals against this OKC team? No. And that's why you haven't seen them get any minutes. And maybe you ease them into it next year, playing them more consistent minutes off the bench in the regular season. But I also think that you need an older head who's been there, done that. And again, Conley's a good player. If you had Conley from 10 years ago, like, he'd be great next to Ant, but you don't. And I think that at this point, you've got to move in the direction where he's the primary ball handler. He can hit a pull-up 3. He can get in the lane, do whatever he wants. Kind of what Jalen Brunson does for the Knicks, but with an actual plan after that, and not just pray he puts it in the basket, because that's kind of what the Knicks have. But that kind of style. That kind of style.
I didn't know you were a Brunson hater. And I don't even know if I was a Brunson hater, because I think I really, like, when Brunson was going off for Dallas, I was like, oh my God, he's so fucking good. And I think I really liked him last year. I don't know what it was about this year that just kind of pissed me off. Maybe it was just the grifting hit a level that I was just like, I'm done with it. Or maybe it was just, I hate playing with ball dominant guards. They fucking suck to play with.
It's not that. It's not the ball dominant guard thing. I love ball dominant guards when they're fun to watch. I don't think we've ever seen, or I don't think I've ever seen, Brunson and SGA make it far in the playoffs with their respective teams, and it might actually hurt their reputation. I mean, both of these guys, Brunson more than SGA.
SGA won an MVP. Like if he wins,
right? But his flopping in the playoffs and the calls that he's gotten, they're treating him like Michael Jordan.
Okay, Chen. The difference I'll say is this though: the reason why, because I had SGA as my MVP as well, and
I had Jokic, but
you had Jokic, yeah. But you know, I had SGA last year, which was debatable. But so I like. So if anything, I'm a little bit biased towards SGA. Like I genuinely think he's incredible.
I think he's incredible too. But I don't know how you can. I don't know how you can watch him play and say that like that's fun to watch. He's at the foul line 15 times a game.
The grifting is terrible, but I think Brunson's way worse as a grifter.
Brunson is worse.
Yeah, like with SGA, at least even without the grift, I still think he would score 30 a night. Because I just think you can't stay in front of him. He literally, he's so coordinated and he's so quick, and he's 6'6". His touch is so good that I just feel like the grifting just makes it easier for him. Whereas with Brunson, if he's not getting his calls, I'm not saying he wouldn't still be really good. I just don't know how good he would be if he's not getting those calls. Whereas with SGA, I feel like he would still find a way to get 30 because he's that fucking good.
I'm in a group
he was
chat.
A lottery pick for a reason, right? Like
yeah,
he was like his talent level is always super high.
He was a good player coming out of college. He probably, I mean, they had that. He was drafted by the Clippers, and they did the Jerome Robinson and him back to back, and we're like, one of these two is going to work out essentially, and he worked out.
And they kept neither of them. It's pretty funny.
And they kept neither of them. But that's more of a history of. There's nothing. That's nothing to do with SGA really. But I'm in a group chat with a Knicks fan who's like, I was talking who's better, Haliburton or JB, and he's telling me, oh, he scores 9 more points a game. He only has 2 fewer assists. I'm like, 9 points a game, yeah, but those are handed out by the refs. And when it comes to crunch time in the playoffs, like, is he going to get those calls? It's kind of the James Harden conundrum. James Harden in Houston, he's unbelievable, like one of the best players we've seen, and deserved his MVP and probably deserved the Russ MVP too. But when it comes to the playoffs, it just doesn't work. And you get to the last 2 minutes of these games, you're not going to get the same calls. And it's awful to watch. I mean, when the NBA reviews the year and they're like, how is our product? It has to be one of the biggest black marks on the league is the foul calls. And especially the end of the game, way too many free throws. And these superstars getting in the line 16 times a game. And a lot of it's head flopping or they're creating the contact. And it's a bad product.
Yeah, I agree. I also think I hate when people compare the raw stats and stuff like that, because anybody who's fucking played a team sport just knows how bad it is to play with ball dominant small guards. It's funny. I was telling you this in high school. My point guard was a ball dominant small guard who scored a ton. I loved playing with them only because I had no offensive skills. So I was just a garbage work type of guy, play defense. So it was easy because I'm like, all right, I don't need to, like, I can't score. So you just score. But if I was a guy who had even remotely any offensive talent and I could help the team, I would hate playing with a guy like that. And obviously you can't really win with those type of guys. Steph is the only example of that, and he plays off the ball, and he's the most team-oriented, like, scoring guard I think I've ever seen. Like, that dude will have a game where he doesn't shoot a lot, where guys just pay attention to him and he's getting open shots for everyone else. So he's the one guy who actually plays off the ball and plays a team game. I just feel like the things that Hallie does, like advance the ball with a pass, he doesn't always have to be the one dribbling it up the court. He'll just throw it up. Just things like that, letting other guys touch the fucking basketball. It just helps guys get in a rhythm. They end up playing better. That's why they're able to play fast. They're able to play defense. I just hate watching the style of basketball that Brunson plays. Now, I will say I am a Trae Young fan, so that is like a bit of a fucking hypocritical thing. But I'll say the difference, and this is where I was defending Trae Young. I said, the thing about Trae Young is I'm hoping he changes a little bit, and you can't argue with his passing ability. It's like, all right, you're going to fucking be annoying and play that style, fine, but Trae Young will get you 25 assists in a game. So I'm not saying I would still live and die with that specifically, but at the very least, the passing talent is top notch. If you're fucking doing that scoring shit and just ball hogging and your passing talent isn't top notch, I mean, come on, what are we doing here, man? That's been my biggest issue with Brunson. Great scorer, but he's okay passer.
I think Trae Young deserves to be in the flopping category for what he's done to earn calls.
He's one of those guys too, 100%.
But I would say he's more fun to watch because of his playmaking and shot making ability. To me, Brunson doesn't elevate anyone on this team. He doesn't make anyone better.
I agree.
Haliburton is getting Ben Shepherd into the game. He's getting Mathurin into the game. He's getting Obi Toppin into the game. He's elevating all the starters. It's not apples to apples. And I think Trae Young kind of splits the difference. He's got a little bit of JB where it's like single focus, tunnel vision. I'm going to score the basketball with a little bit of flopping and a little bit of kick out and a little bit of this and a little bit of that to get those calls. And he's smaller, so he's got to do a little bit of that. But then he's got also a lot of Haliburton in him where he's got the passing and the playmaking, and he can get you 15 assists in a game. And he's got that as part of his game, even if it doesn't always shine through.
Yeah.
And I'm not a Trae Young guy. I don't like small guards. Never going to be my thing. I would never trade for him. But I see the merits to his game. Whereas with JB, he's an excellent scorer, but he's not a complete basketball player. And I'm not sure you can win with him as your number one guy. Like, I don't think the Knicks will ever win a championship with him.
As your number one.
As the number one. I mean, I don't really know how they can construct the team where he's not the number one guy.
Yeah.
It would have to be through free agency, or it would have to be through a trade that didn't really make sense. Like, they'd have to get KD or someone, essentially, in order for him not to be the number one guy. Because how old's Jalen Brunson?
It's like 27 or something like that.
He's in the second half of his 20s. So, he's approaching that age where, like, look, he's a thick guard, so he'll probably play a little bit longer than like those really small guards, but he's not going to be this player that's putting up 25 a game forever. He's maybe got 2 or 3 more years of this. So their window's not that open. They've got to win
it's now. It's fucking right now. They traded 4 picks from Mikal Bridges. That was the craziest thing.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
So they either have to hit on a draft pick, like a second rounder or something like that, or they have to make a crazy trade or get a crazy free agent like a KD through a trade or however he would get there. And I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think they'll keep going to the Eastern Conference semis or the finals, and this is probably their ceiling. If they can't beat this Pacers team, like, Cleveland's going to be back next year. I think Boston will take the year off, but they'll be back in 2 years.
I don't even think Boston's going to be that bad next year. Everyone's writing the obituary on Boston. I'm telling you, I wouldn't be surprised if Boston, and it pains me to say this because I'm a Celtics hater, but I wouldn't be surprised if Boston still ends up around 4 or 5 seed in the East next year. Yeah,
the thing is, the East is so weak that they'll probably make the playoffs by default.
That's what I'm saying.
Are they going to be a threat? I mean,
probably not.
They've got to get off that Drew Holiday contract. They have to.
Who's trading for Drew Holiday? This is the thing that I was okay. So we both think the Pacers are going to win this series. I think, you know me, I'm a fucking paranoid fuck. So I think it's going to go 6, and the series has been so crazy that I'm not counting the Knicks out completely, because I do think they've had a chance to basically win every single game other than maybe game 2. I think game 2 was the only game where it was like a 9-point margin of victory kind of throughout. Maybe I'm wrong, but game 1, they should have won that. So the series should be tied. And they stole game 3 because the Pacers just completely self-destructed. But even last night, there was a point where they got it to 4 or 5 late in the game. Yeah. So I think the Pacers are better, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks make it interesting. We'll see. But OKC, I think they take out Minnesota tonight at home. And I think we both think OKC's winning it now. I'll give you credit. You called it from the beginning of the playoffs. So moving on to
I think OKC wins tonight. I think the Pacers win tomorrow, and then I think OKC will sweep.
Or do you think OKC is going to be a dynasty? Because you were saying that you're not as – because everyone's like sucking their fucking cocks right now, being like, oh my God, they still got Nikola Topic coming in and all this stuff. I just feel like you and I have been around the block enough where the dynasty is never like necessarily the obvious team, and you need some black magic to happen, like the Warriors black magic to happen to really be a dynasty. And yours, I mean, I think
I would straight up rather they're going to win a champion. I was going to say they're going to win a championship this year, so obviously you want to be OKC because you want to be the winner. But if you're saying forget this season, project forward, I'd rather be the Spurs.
Why the Spurs?
Because
other than the Wemby, like they obviously have Wemby.
What do you mean other than the Wemby? You mean the possibly the best player in basketball in a year or two? The best player. We're talking about.
Yeah, but OKC's the rest of the OKC's team and their cap flexibility and how many picks they have. Like,
yeah, I'm not sure all those picks are going to work out to be incredible picks, but I'll say this: we're looking at a Spurs team that, with a healthy Wemby, could have the best offensive and best defensive player on the team in one player, and assets as well. And they've drafted well. And I just think, I mean, look, they might trade for Giannis, and then we have this conversation in a couple months, and it's like, yeah, I'd love to be the Spurs. They might just take Dylan Harper and build around him and move off of Fox, which is what I would do as well. I'm not
neither
a Fox
of us
guy.
are Fox guy.
Neither, but I'm just saying, I like the Spurs. I think that they have a bright future. I know you're going to hate me for saying this. I really like the Lakers. I think you've got this. No, but let me speak, because you're going to take the negative perspective on the Lakers because you don't even want to put it out there in the universe. We know that you're all about the black magic, and you'd never jinx your guys like that. So let me give you the pitch.
Yeah.
LeBron James at the end of his career, he just
still great.
I mean, still anyone who's saying otherwise is a buffoon. Still great.
Yeah, still great.
And I don't see him leaving the NBA without one more. I think he's got one more in him. Sometimes you're like, how does this play out? And I'm just like, I know that he's going to have one more just hugging the, that trophy. I know that's how he's going to complete his legacy.
I'm with you. I just can't see him and Luka not winning one together. Like right,
so this is what I'm saying. So they've got LeBron, who is as motivated as anyone has ever been to play this long, and he wants to go out on top.
Right.
You've got Luka,
who's getting skinny. I don't care what anyone says.
Listen, I follow soccer. I watch the Real Madrid games. I follow the Real Madrid news, and all the news when I typed in Real Madrid was Luka Doncic looks like he's dropped 20. I mean, it was like a Kardashian TMZ cover, but it was the Real Madrid news was about Luka. Yeah. And so, yeah, skinny Luka, theoretically, skinny Luka. And then the third amigo, Bronny, obviously not Bronny, but they've got other pieces. They've got Austin Reeves.
Bronny might actually have to play next year.
Listen, if you move, they got to get it big. If you move Austin Reeves and or connect, there's a world where Bronny's the ninth guy on this team, and he gives you, like you said, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a game, probably at most. But unless he gets hot, but there's a role on the team. I'm obviously joking that he's the third amigo, but I'm saying they've got Austin Reeves, who they should probably move. They've got Connect, who they could package. They need to get it big, but they're the Lakers. So they attract talent, and you never know. They buy a second round pick. They've done well with their second round picks. Max Christie was a good pick. Bronny was a good pick. Austin Reeves was a good pick. Like, they've done well with their picks. So yeah, they buy a second round pick. That guy ends up being a rotation player. I'm just saying they're not far away. If you were like, hey, I can have two of the top 10 guys in the league, and self-admitted, both LeBron and Luka are top 10 guys. You have Luka as a top 5 guy. So 2 top 10 guys in the league, I would rather have that than SGA and some good role players. That's just me,
that's a very controversial take.
I'll say this. I'm not high. I'm not that high on Jalen Williams. I love Chet. If Chet can stay healthy.
What about Jalen Williams' outburst the other night, the 33-point? Because he hit some fucking big shot. I've been with you.
And Buddy Hield put up 30 in this playoffs too. Like, it's like, look,
Chet was absurd though. You and I both thought that Chet.
I thought Chet was the best player on the court. I'm not even kidding. I thought
better than SGA.
I think so. Chet changed the game. I think that OKC is so talented. They can get scoring from so many places. Jalen Williams being one of them. Yeah. They can get scoring from a bunch of places. Kason Wallace is really good.
He's really good.
You can get scoring from all over the place. But Chet's the only guy that gives you the end of shot clock threes, all of the hustle plays, all of the cleanup, and on the defensive end, is just a menace. He's a menace. Like he's got the quick twitch, which is weird for a guy his size as a white guy too. But he's got that quick twitch. He's got he is twitchy.
He's twitchy.
And he's got a quick jump. He's tough. If he can stay healthy, he will be a top 10 player in the NBA.
Yeah. Well, that's my thing is, dude, OKC has him and he's like 21 years old or whatever. He's so young. So, and Jalen Williams is still pretty young.
I like Jalen Williams. My footnote with him is I think it's easier to be him when you're next to an SGA.
Agree.
Like people are like scaling out his role if he was like the number one guy, but I wouldn't do that. I would say he'd probably be less effective as the number one guy. So I think for me, Chet's the number 2 guy on that team. And at some point they'll probably have 2 number 1s like the Lakers have and like San Antonio will probably have at some point. But everyone talks about cap room and picks and this and that. And, we've seen it a million times.
Yeah, we have.
The window is never as large as you think it is. And this is a year where, there hasn't been a standout team. I think Denver kind of fucked up their situation a little bit. I think every year with Jokic is an opportunity to win the championship, and they didn't do what they needed to do to give him the pieces to do that this year, and he took them as far as he possibly could. But he's always going to be a threat. I just think everything lined up for OKC this year because when I entered the playoff picture, I was like, yeah, I kind of have to pick them. I just think everything lined up for them, and the odds of that happening again is slim.
Listen, I don't disagree from your perspective when it comes to the West having being even better next year. Totally agree with that. I'd still put OKC close to the top of that pack. Now, it's funny that I'm saying this now because I didn't have OKC winning the championship going in, but that's because you know me, I'm always so worried about the Warriors. I always just felt like, and we didn't end up seeing the matchup, but I just remember thinking if they end up playing the Warriors, what happens when Draymond Green punches Jalen Williams in the face? I was like, that's going to happen if they play. He's going to injure 2 of OKC's guys. And then how does a young team respond? Well, they never had to find, it's the Kanye meme. It's like, I guess we'll never know.
I guess we'll never know.
They never had to face him. Cause I just remember thinking that's the first thing he's going to do. The first thing he's going to do is fucking hip check.
You have a Golden State Warriors complex.
I do. I 100% do. Yeah. I only
for me,
you're rational. You're not thinking about
they would have ran them out of the gym. I think OKC probably would have swept maybe a gentleman's sweep.
You were saying that
they've got no size. OKC or Golden State has no size. They have no way to deal with Hartenstein and Chet. Yeah. And I just think that they run riot on them. I think that OKC, it would have been a nasty series. I mean, it would have been blowout after blowout after blowout. I don't think they would have been able to keep up with them.
I do.
Okay, the only reason that Minnesota has been able to stay into some games is because Randall went crazy, right? And they've got 2 guys that are still in their prime that are, can have the legs to do that. But yeah, this OKC team, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh on them. They have some special pieces, but what I'm saying is it's not LeBron D Wade. We're not running it back. You know what I mean? It's not Kobe Shaq. Like there are teams that can elevate to a level that matches them or exceeds them. Denver is another team that I don't think they're far away. Every year you have a healthy Jokic and Murray. It's just about getting the pieces around Jokic and keeping all those pieces healthy. But if they can add a couple pieces, I write them in for a championship next year. He's so good. He's so good. He's so much better than everybody else.
You know who else is another team that's, I know it's going to sound crazy. I don't know what their cap situation is, but I don't think they're that far away. The Clippers. They took Denver to 7. I just want to say they're not. Obviously, there's a lot of issues with their top 2 guys, but Harden's still fucking good. Harden's still good. And yes, you're going to have issues if Harden's your number 1. He's not your number 1. It's Kawhi. Obviously, the Kawhi health thing, but Zubac is fucking nasty. And they still have some good players on that team and Norm Powell. So they have to get younger, but I can't count out the Clippers. I really can't.
If your number 1 is Kawhi Leonard,
you're just not going to be in a good enough situation going into the playoffs.
There's too many questions let me put it like this. I would never bet on the Clippers because you're one Shams update away from your bet losing.
Yeah.
And it's pretty high chance that that's going to happen. Because the thing with Kawhi is he was healthy this playoffs, but They lost in the first round. If he goes multiple series, 7 games, like he's not making it out alive. I'm telling you, like that he's not built for a long playoff run. He's unbelievable. If you could guarantee me that he stays healthy, sure, like that's probably a good gamble. And I like their roster. I think Harden's still at this age, like he's still a special player, and has that in him, even though he doesn't always show up in the playoffs. I think he's a really good player.
He's still incredible.
He's still Harden. He's still Harden. Even if he's not 100%, he's still Harden. Yeah. And they've got some other pieces, and the Zubats is good. And yeah, they can add some pieces around. But as long as you've got Kawhi as your number one, I struggle to believe. And the funny thing is, we're having this conversation, and if Giannis moves this offseason, this conversation you may as well just stop the recording 40 minutes in, because this whole conversation means nothing. And wherever Giannis goes, it's going to completely shift the landscape of the NBA. And then we're also going to see some cascading effects from that, because other teams are going to have to make moves to compete. And we're going to see some teams push their chips into the middle of the table for sure.
Yeah, so there'll be plenty to talk about in the offseason. So you really think if we do have OKC Pacers, that the Pacers just have no chance?
No chance. I'm super confident in the OKC matchup, because the Pacers win because of their pace. Like they want to play faster than you. They want to get shots up, and they want everything to run through Haliburton. And OKC just so happens to have a team built to defeat that. I mean, they also can run up the pace. They run the floor. They have Lou Dort that they can put on Haliburton if they wanted to. If not, they have Jalen Williams. SGA can guard. Like they've got what? Who guards Siakam? I probably Chet for. I mean, they'll probably put Hartenstein in on.
See, that's. I'll say this:
like
he's kind of an X factor, because right now Chet's guarding Gobert, who has 0 offensive skill. So he basically doesn't really have to guard him. He has to fight him for rebounds, but he doesn't really have to worry about Gobert scoring.
I just
Siakam is a matchup nightmare, I gotta say, man. He's a beast.
Siakam's been good this playoffs. I like Siakam. If you ask Toronto fans, I think you'll get mixed views on him, but he's a matchup issue, and he's been good this playoffs. I agree with both of those things. I don't think he's a game changer enough to shift away from OKC's depth. They've got the depth. But more importantly, they're happy for the Pacers to play the way that they want to play, and they can just match them. You know, like the Knicks need to slow down the game if they want to beat the Pacers. Whereas I think OKC is just, we'll let you play your game. We're going to play your game better than you. And what's the Pacers' response at that point? And I just don't think they don't have the personnel. That's the truth. They don't have the
right now. We're seeing this against Minnesota, where they don't really have a floor general. Like Hallie just had a 15 assists, 0 turnover game. I think him and Siakam have combined for like 8 turnovers, or like I saw some absurd stat. They don't really turn it over. So it's not the same as running against Minnesota. Yeah, obviously, if Conley was young Conley was incredible, but he's way older, so you can't really run point for them. So you're basically facing Minnesota with Ant and Julius Randle running. And I don't want
Ant's a harder guard than anyone on the Pacers. But
he's not going to it's not like the turnover. Like I watched Minnesota, and they have just way more bozo ball players, namely Dante DiVincenzo.
I hear it.
DiVincenzo and Randall are like turnover machines, bro.
I hear it. They protect the ball better. I don't think it's a good matchup for them, because the Pacers like to beat teams playing their style, and normally the other team doesn't want to play that style. And I just think that OKC matches up stylistically, and the personnel. I just don't think that they have the depth to keep up with them. I mean, when Miles Turner is not on the floor, I don't know what the Pacers do. Like Miles Turner is underrated for the simple fact that he is producing when he's on the floor, meaning like he is putting up minutes that if he's not on the floor, the opportunity cost of having someone else in, Bradley or Brian or whoever they have in, those are garbage minutes. Those are minutes you are trying to get through, kind of like when they don't have Haliburton on the floor, but possibly worse.
Yeah. Look, so I'd still lean OKC to win that, but I'm giving the Pacers a chance. But obviously I can't be a bet hedger. So my pick is still OKC. But I think
it's OKC in 4 and at worst 5. At worst. I do not see that. I do not.
I will say this though: if it does work out, Pacers winning, oh my God, Haliburton puts himself in so crazy.
Let's play this game because we've got a few minutes left here. Yeah. If the Pacers win the championship, what changes in terms of Haliburton's legacy, in terms of Rick Carlisle's legacy, in terms of where we rank Haliburton player-wise, how teams make changes in the offseason, how they approach the offseason, and the type of profile and of player that gets drafted or gets traded for? What changes in that?
I actually really like this question because I think if OKC wins, nothing really changes. Like nothing they did was like hoard assets and just catch. You know what I mean? Like
because OKC the build was essentially we got a king's ransom for Paul George. You can't replicate that. That was luck that fell in their lap. You can't replicate that. So there's no
MVP player for antics.
Right. So there's no learnings from that. They got lucky. So if the Pacers win though,
there's
will
actual
change a lot.
shit.
Yeah.
All right. I think first of all, if the Pacers win, which is what I'm hoping for, Rick Carlisle puts himself in probably. He won't have the pure ring number to be in the Phil Jackson, like Red Auerbach fucking. I'm only listing that not because we fucking watched them, but just for the numbers. But right now it's like it'd be like Phil Jackson, Steve Kerr, and Greg Popovich, right, as the three greatest coaches ever. He's not there with just 2 rings, but it's like he's right outside of there. I think there'd be an argument that he's a better coach than Steve Kerr. Like.
I personally have Spoelstra above him. That's just me.
Oh, Spo. I forgot about Spo. Sorry. I forgot about Spo. Yeah, Spo. Yeah. But he puts himself in that conversation. So you could put Spo above him because Spo has just a ton of finals appearances. I mean, Spo had finals appearances with the 2020 Heat, which was really impressive, and the 2023 Heat, which is also absurd. So, I'd still put Spo above him. Spo's got 2 rings, a bunch of finals MVP or finals appearances. But he's probably right there, right after Spo. He immortalizes himself winning championships with multiple franchises. Dude, how many coaches have done that? That's basic off the top. It's just Phil, right? Phil won with Chicago and then he won with LA. But how many other coaches in NBA history have won championships with different franchises?
Yeah, he put himself in a special tier.
Wait, because in the 2000s, 2000 2010, the only teams that won championships, or the only coaches that did, were Phil Jackson, Greg Popovich, Larry Brown, and Doc.
We're talking 2000 to 2010
years? 2010. Okay. So it's just Phil Jackson, Greg Popovich, Larry Brown that one year, Doc Rivers that one year.
Yep.
Then from 11 to 20, it was Rick Carlisle.
Yep.
Spo. Oh, sorry, I forgot about Pat Riley. Pat Riley's done it. He won with the Lakers and the Heat. So Pat Riley it'd be Pat Riley, Phil, but then from 11 to 20, it's Carlisle, Popovich, Spo, Kerr, Lou,
Nick Nurse,
Malone, Nick Nurse,
and who was the Bucks coach?
Missoula, and then Budenholzer. It's all It's all one-offs.
Yeah. It's one-offs,
He'd be number 2.
And that's more about superstar than coach. I think from what you've kind of recapped, I think Pat Riley, Phil Jackson,
Pop,
are Kerr and Red are probably in a tier of their own.
Yeah, and then Spo, and then I think after Spo would be Carlisle. But I would put Spo and Carlisle on the same tier, but I'd say Spo's like way ahead of him in that tier. Or maybe Spo's in his own tier, honestly. Maybe that might be disrespectful.
I don't know. Either way,
no talent really.
Either way, he's in the same sentence as we're talking like all-time coaches, like best of all time. So he's elevated himself to another level with a championship. What happens with Haliburton? Immediate reaction is he the best Pacer of all time, just like Giannis was the best Buck of all time immediately after he won a championship?
I think so, 100%. Because you can say Reggie this and that, but dude, when you win the championship, it's different because you won the championship. He's been a Pacer for a few years, put up numbers. Obviously, he has to put up more numbers. But with that triple-double, he already has, I think, he's already tied for triple-double leader because I think on the list, it was him, Mark Jackson, Oladipo all with one triple-double in the playoffs. Because they don't have they haven't had a ton of superstars going through there. So I think he becomes the best pacer of all time. Obviously, it's more of a discussion of his career where it just end right after that. But you're assuming he plays at least, the rest of his career and makes more all-star teams and stuff like that. Yeah, becomes the best pacer of all time. I think the conversations for him then will be, I think you can't put him above guys like Kidd or Nash, obviously, but he'll be looked at as okay, can he start earning crazy stats, continuing to put up numbers, and is he going to fall in that greatest point, one of the greatest point guards of all time? He'll be putting himself on that trajectory if he wins a championship for sure. Still has to put up way more numbers. Obviously, Nash has 2 MVPs. Kidd has a championship. Kidd has crazy stats. But Haliburton's 25. He's still pretty young. And then for Siakam, I think it elevates Siakam's legacy to a Drew Holiday level where the Hall of Fame is not hard to make. He'll now have won 2 championships, which are the franchise's only championships, right? Toronto and Indiana.
As the number 2 guy. You get
as the number 2 guy, but still, that makes his career, yeah. And then for everybody else, no one else is really in any serious conversations. But yeah, that'll kind of be the biggest thing. Will be Haliburton will be viewed as the best point guard in the league.
Wait, real quick, I have to ask. So on the Toronto team, you would have him over Lowry?
On the number 2 that year, 100%. I thought he was better.
Yeah,
dude,
it's just a question. Only because Lowry, I think, gets a lot of credit for that run. So
he does, and he deserves a lot of credit. But I think Siakam was the second best player.
Yeah,
because his defense was
so. I think it's pretty clear, and we're probably being a bit over the top with not with what we're saying, but just the enthusiasm with which we're saying it. I think it's pretty obvious that Rick Carlisle will be put into the next tier and Haliburton will be the best pacer. Of course they would be. So more importantly, how does this change the rest of the NBA landscape with trades, with team building, with how we view roster construction and how we view the point guard position?
Okay. So you know me, I have been scarred from this. I've never really liked the multiple superstar model, which sounds crazy coming from a LeBron stan. And I will explain why. I was done with it basically when the Heat lost to the Spurs in 2014. That's when I was done with it. Because I just remember thinking, fuck this. How much of this model is being carried by LeBron James being in his prime? So I remember going back to the Cavs, not saying you don't want superstars, but I just remember thinking, I don't want to sacrifice major assets and a ton of good players to get a superstar. If you can get a superstar for free, not free, but in free agency, I'm all about it. So I remember when LeBron went back to Cleveland, I didn't want them to trade Wiggins. I did not want them to trade Wiggins. Everybody thought I was an idiot. And I think in hindsight, I think it was clear they shouldn't have traded Wiggins because Kevin Love didn't really help them at all in those playoff runs. No shade against Kevin Love. It's just Wiggins was a more valuable archetype. I've always been against just chasing after stars, as crazy as that sounds. I was against the Anthony Davis trade, which obviously they won the championship from that. You remember that day where you walked in the room and you were like, they made the trade, and I was like, no.
Yeah, so, but it was the right trade to make, and I always maintain that the Anthony Davis trade, I know they gave up pieces that you liked, but they never aggregated or culminated to the output that Davis had as a singular player. And it was and getting one championship with him and then the Luka. I mean, it's clear that was the right play.
100%. And at that time, I was just greedy. I just remember thinking I want to keep the guys and then have them come in free agency the next year. So yes, I understand. You couldn't risk another year on LeBron's timeline. I think if the Pacers win, it makes, first of all, the one thing I harp on all the time, which is teams need to run plays and plays matter. I think that becomes fucking obvious because I think what they do more so than just setting the pace and pushing and starting early in the shot clock is that they always have multiple actions on plays. So I think more and more teams are going to start looking to running a system and ball movement. So I think it brings back more of a 2014 Spurs style of play, but it's different now because when it was the 14 Spurs, it was like, oh, they still have Popovich, and I know Tim's old, but they still have this legacy Hall of Fame big three with a young superstar in Kawhi. So I think a lot of teams are probably looking at that like, oh, that's more of their thing. But if the Pacers do it, it's like, dude, you're replicating this with players that teams are throwing away. Like they traded for Siakam, right? So I think system becomes very, very valuable after this. And then I think when it comes to building out players, I think more and more teams are going to rethink how they evaluate players, and more teams are going to try to do the thing where they try to get a player that on the surface, when they get the consensus reaction is, oh, this player doesn't immediately make you a contender, but they're going to stop thinking about it in that perspective and just say, okay, just trade for trade. Does this player make us a better team? And if so, we'll do the trade. Because that's what the Siakam trade was. A lot of people like the trade, were like, okay, this kind of makes sense. Granted, he plays a different style than what they play, blah, blah, blah. But it was a trade that made them better. It didn't make them on paper these like championship favorites or anything like that. But now it's paying off a lot. Same as Naismith, bro, on a way smaller scale. They took Naismith from the Celtics, who was undervalued. And then the last guy is Obi Toppin. The Knicks fucking drafted Obi Toppin, and the Pacers were just like, oh, like, we'll just take him if you guys don't want him. And they kept Miles Turner. So they kept a lot of guys that players were like, or teams were like, you know, they're okay. They're not going to put you over the top. It doesn't look like you have enough talent on paper, but you put them in the right system and you get the right superstar to make it all work. Anything is possible.
Is this the best example of Moneyball in the NBA?
Would you argue this or OKC?
I would argue. So I hate that assertion. No. I hate that assertion because OKC got lucky. Like it's kind of like the whole Boston, New York, Brooklyn thing. It's okay, we're going to give you 4 first-round picks and 4 pick swaps, and you give us your 3 aging stars. It's like that's not replicable. Yeah. And hey, give us Paul George because we have to get Paul George to get Kawhi, and that's the only reason we're going to trade everything. And we'll give you everything, the whole package of picks, and we'll give you SJ, who turns out to be, you know, an MVP. It's not replicable. The whole point of Moneyball is that you're putting in a system that evaluates undervalued players or player traits that can have a cumulative effect on the team that is perceived to be undervalued at that time. So you're replacing like a star with 2 or 3 guys that make up the box score and the numbers and all that stuff. Like that's the idea that I'm kind of moving forward with Moneyball. Okay. The whole Sam Presti, I tanked for a while, plus I was able to accumulate all these picks through a lucky trade, to me is an anomaly and an outlier, and it's not replicable. So this roster construction, and maybe more so of like the Toronto Raptors roster construction, where it's more organic.
I'll say this. I get what you're saying. If you're just looking at it from value versus contract and stuff like that, this would be the best example from recent memory. Here's why. All the other teams that won had guys that were, and look, this may look like hindsight now because Haliburton's really good, but at the same time, Haliburton got traded from the Kings. I mean, they obviously picked the wrong guy, but when Toronto won it, Kawhi, before the Toronto trade, already had a season where he finished like top 3 in MVP voting, right? So it was still, you're anchored by a legitimate top 3, top 4 type of player in the NBA. I was going to say Denver did some Moneyball shit when they got Aaron Gordon, who was undervalued. But once again, they had Jokic. So once again, anchored by that level player. Even OKC, they do a little bit of Moneyball stuff, I guess, with younger players, like, and guys like Kenrick Williams. So they'll play like a bunch of younger guys and stuff like that. They get value later in the draft, but still anchored by SGA. Arguably the best player in the league. But whatever. MVP, you and I have him as like number 3 or number, point remains is Haliburton is a guy that was traded, was a guy that was drafted 7th in the pick, and wasn't a guy coming into this season that people had consensus top 10. I think some people might have had him outside of the top 15, and the rest of their team. I think
some people might have had him outside the top 20.
Yeah, because he ended the season horribly last year because of the injury. I mean, he had some really, in his first 2 months of the year were a wreck, but he was going through a lot of shit, and he was probably mentally trying to get right from his injury. But dude, Nembhard, super underrated. Like all the guys we talked about, Toppin, Naismith. Yeah, you're probably right. It's probably the best example of that. The funny thing about the Pacers is they could be better. They might have missed on Jarris Walker. I'm not like, he's still pretty young, but he's a guy that doesn't play at all, that they drafted 7th. So you got to think about like that. Like,
yeah, but they don't really play Mathurin that much either. And then they drafted
him
Walker,
like 7th.
And Walker's only 21. Like, it's too early to make a call on him. But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Like they could have more guys pop off. Like Jarris Walker could develop. And then Isaiah Jackson tore his Achilles earlier in the year. If he was their backup center, they'd be in a much better position because he's actually pretty solid as a backup. I forget who other tore. Yeah.
Wrapping this up, though, we're at about an hour 25. So we'll make this like a 90-minute pod. Last question. Even if the Pacers don't win, but let's say Haliburton is like the all-time pacer. Where would you rank that trade in the worst trades in the league the last 10 years? And is Sacramento the worst front office org in the league?
That trade. Okay, so
is that trade okay? Let me say better or worse. Is that trade worse than the James Harden trade?
Oh man, I gotta.
Because Houston didn't win a championship. Houston didn't win a championship, but that trade was so lopsided and like OKC essentially flushed championships down the toilet. You don't think it's worse than the Harden trade?
No, okay. The Harden trade was unnecessary.
Yeah,
it was just unnecessary. They didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
The Fox Halley thing, I think they had to pick one of them. They just picked the wrong guy.
They actually picked neither. Their option was secret option C, neither, which is crazy.
DeRozan and Levine, which is fucking crazy. But yeah, at that time they picked Fox, which was you and I both don't like we kind of like the playmaker type. So I think and even more than us being like pro Halley, I think neither of us have ever really been a De'Aaron Fox guy. So I think we were just like, even it was less about Halley and just more like fuck De'Aaron Fox. But it's not, to me, it's not worse than the Harden trade. The Luka trade now I got to relitigate because I mean we don't know if there was some shenanigans going on. If there were no shenanigans, I still don't think it's worse than the Luka trade. I think the Luka trade, just how it was executed, not telling anyone about it, not offering him up to the rest of the league, stuff like that. I still think that's worse. And he was like your homegrown guy. You lost a lot of fans with that trade. So I think assuming that Silver didn't tell Nico, yo, we're going to give you the number one pick, because that does change things. It does change it. I still like it changes things a lot in a crazy way. I'm not saying you still make that trade, but it changes things a lot. If that's
I don't think that we can
subscribe. Okay, so without that, I don't think
it's not included in the trade package.
Okay, I don't think so. I don't think it's worse than the Luka trade. I think it's definitely, to me, it's definitely worse than the trade for SGA, because even though it's easy to shit on the Clippers now and say they gave up and a future MVP, at that time, Paul George was in his prime. Kawhi just won a championship. Everyone was saying Kawhi was the best player in the world. And that trade was essentially also for Kawhi. It was a trade for PG and Kawhi. On paper, I thought that team was going to win the championship. For what it's worth, they were up 3-1 against the Nuggets, and they were up like 17, and they choked game 5, and they were up well into double digits. So that was just some Clippers curse shit that went about as poorly as you could imagine. But that team was nasty, bro.
I actually don't think that trade was bad at all. Like I wouldn't even wouldn't even be an honorable mention for me.
But
that's what I'm saying. Why OKC got lucky, because that was just one of those trades where it's like the Mavericks. It's like, hey, you got the first pick in the draft with the 2% chance. It's like, so you're saying there's a chance? Yeah, it worked out the best it possibly could for you, but it wasn't because you did a good job.
Yeah, I would put this trade more in the realm of I'd put it more in the realm of the Russ trade for the Lakers, like that level of trade. I don't know if it was worse. I'd also put it in the realm of a sneaky bad trade that off the top I'm thinking about, which is when the Atlanta Hawks traded 3 first-rounders for DeJounte Murray. That was a horrible trade. That was a fucking horrible trade. So I'd put it more like that was such a bad trade. And
they're still paying for it. They've got the 14th pick this year from them.
Yeah. So I would put it more in the category of that trade. I thought, I probably more in that category. Do you think it's worse than the Gobert trade?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because you don't know what the Gobert, what the fruits of that trade will be for Utah. But I think it's a way better trade than I think the Gobert trade's way worse than that. Way worse.
Because it was 5 first-round picks, right?
No. The Gobert trade is up there for worst in my mind. Seriously,
Yeah,
it was inexcusable. I couldn't believe it. I remember I called you, like, I was like, this is a joke.
You called me right after the trade went down.
I literally couldn't believe it. It wasn't the Luka shock level, but it was the same number on the Richter scale. It just wasn't Luka's name. Luka had the name.
Where do you put this trade? I'm trying to think relative to the Mikal Bridges for 4 first-rounders trade. I think that trade is going to look worse and worse.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately
with today's. Also, sorry to cut you off. That trade went down with today's CBA.
Yeah.
So first-rounders are more valuable than ever before.
Fortunate for the Knicks, though, they should project out to be pretty good the next few years, especially just how shit the East is. So Brooklyn is probably going to be getting a lot of 25 and over picks. The 25th pick and over. Most likely. Look, it could be they could get some picks in the teens. I'm just saying, like, are they going to get a top 10 pick? Most likely not from this. I'm not saying they can't hit on those picks. I'm not saying it wasn't a bad trade. I think that was a horrendous trade, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. My issue with Brooklyn is I'm just not confident that they're going to be able to turn it into anything good. I think Utah's way more likely to do something with the picks that they get.
What was the trade again that Philly made to the Celtics during the Fultz Tatum draft? What did Philly give up in addition to?
Yeah, so that was separate. That was just a simple trade to get the first pick in exchange for the third pick. I think they gave up an additional first.
That's a low key. Not saying they could have ever gotten Tatum, because the Celtics knew going in that, because the Celtics had number 1 and they had done their intel. They knew the Lakers were taking Lonzo and they knew Philly was taking Fultz. If they had any whiff of Philly taking Tatum, they would have just kept the pick. So that was so it's not like Philly could have ever had Tatum, but it is crazy thinking back to that trade where
who did that player end up being, though? Like, let's look that up.
Yeah, you look that up. That was a sneaky one of, like, the most tragic moves that had happened to the Sixers during that run.
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, they received the 3rd overall pick, which they selected Tatum, and a conditional first.
Did that ever convey?
Let me see.
I'm always curious what ended up happening with that trade, because I remember it was another Danny Fleece.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm going to ESPN for this. This is like the last place to go.
ESPN sucks.
It really does. It's sad to see, but let me see. It became a future first-round pick that turned into the number 14th in 2019, and that was Romeo Langford. So honestly, no.
Yeah,
like he was a nobody. So
I probably rank this below the Gobert trade, because at least Sabonis is tradable to me. You could still get something for him, but
no. Listen, the Sabonis is a good player. Like, it's not in the same tier as like Rudy Gobert or some of these other. Sabonis is a very good player, but let me ask you this same question in a different way, because it's more of an indictment on the Kings, because they traded away 100%. Him, and then they bet on Fox and they traded Fox immediately. So it's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
In our lifetime, if you had to make a bet on one NBA franchise not winning a championship, so probably in the next 50, 60 years, would it be the Sacramento Kings or somebody else?
Hornets
over the Kings for not winning a championship.
Still.
Okay. Let's say the Hornets. Well, the Hornets just changed ownership, so maybe that turns around for them.
The Kings have shown have actually had periods of competency though. Like even after the bad Hallie trade, they ended up building a team that like went to the playoffs once, and then they were competent in the early 2000s, right? That was a long time ago, but the Hornets have never been competent ever. Now it might change.
Yeah, but they've had Mike Jordan as their owner. That's over now, and we need a window of time to see how new ownership comes in and changes things. I'd rather be the Hornets right now. I mean, I'd rather have LaMelo and Brandon Miller and the pieces they've got. So I don't like any of the Kings pieces.
Okay, so you know which teams, like the reason why I'm hesitant to say it would be the Kings is I think they make dumb moves, obviously, but they'll still swing to try to get better. They just have no fucking clue what they're doing. I would more peg it as an organization that isn't really trying to win, but is just trying to be semi-competent, like the Bulls.
Yeah, but I'm always I would never pick a big market.
But you get what I'm saying, though, right?
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Actually, make moves like they're fine with.
Yeah, but the Bulls luck into like a Derrick Rose or like a franchise-defining guy, and then he'll like actually stay because it's a big market.
The one
like,
guy they got was Michael Jordan. Like it was
No, but the Bulls could have won one if Rose stayed healthy. That was in their wheelhouse with Rose and Noah and they had a roster worthy of winning a ship, even if they didn't win one.
All right, let me try to think of more. Ironically, I think Philadelphia will get over the hump at some point.
Philly wouldn't even be in my top 10.
I'm just saying
Philly's definitely going to win one in our lifetime.
They've been snake bitten pretty badly.
Like I would say the Kings, Charlotte are probably two of the main teams. Look, I don't even know what to do with Orlando because I feel like they are competent enough to maybe get one, but
Wizards are up there, but you and I both like the Wizards' current team. Like we think they actually have.
The Wizards are another one where I'm just like they're a big enough market. See, the reason why I pick like an Orlando, it's not the same market size. It's like if the Wizards got a star, like if they get another Gilbert Arenas, right? Like you're going to be able to retain that player because he's not going to be pushing for a move because Washington's actually a big market. It's not the biggest market, but it's a big enough market to keep your guys in place for the most part. And then, Pelicans. That was kind of where I was leaning next. But like, I don't know. The Pelicans like kind of had a period where I was like excited about their team. Obviously, Zion didn't work out, so that doesn't matter. But they've shown me enough to be like, hey, they could swing one. Like I believe in them more than some of these other franchises.
My final thing with the Kings is even though they've like fumbled a lot of shit, they've low-key stumbled upon some pretty good players that have like just come through over the last few years. Even first of all, I gotta give them credit for drafting Hallie, which was hilarious. That Hallie kind of fell. Like, thank God Golden State didn't fucking draft Hallie, right? So it's funny that they ended up identifying Hallie as the talent, but then they didn't want to draft Luka. I think part of the reason also was they were picking Fox. They're like, oh, we don't need Luka because of
they didn't draft Luka Doncic, who was the best player at Real Madrid at like 16, 17 years old. Like,
right.
In for the best team in Europe. Like, and won everything with them as their best player and won MVP of the EuroLeague. Like, what?
But I just feel like when I look back at recent history, the Kings, it's just this weird universe thing where whether it's guys that they could have drafted that they didn't, guys that they drafted that they just traded away, they come close to just sniffing like really talented guys. Yeah, and look, they have Keegan Murray. Like Keegan Murray was a good pickup. Keon Ellis is good. Like they've had a decent amount of talent come in. They just have zero direction, no idea how to use it. But that ownership group, to me, they're dumb, but they try. Some of these teams don't try. Yeah, but
with Sacramento, they kind of remind me of that guy in your fantasy football league where sometimes his team's good, sometimes it's bad, but every time you get in the draft with him, you're like, you're probably better off auto picking. Like you're probably better off with the computer just taking the best available guy than you doing whatever crazy like scheme you think is right. Like taking Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic or making a trade or picking Fox over Haliburton or trading Fox like a couple seasons later. Like whatever you're planning on doing your master plan, you're probably better off just doing the most basic option. and they never do that. And I'm not even sure they overthink it. Not all these teams have had the options to do what Sacramento's done.
Well, that's my point. Is whatever it is with the basketball gods, they get that's there. It's this. They always come close to touching it. So I feel like they'll touch it, and at one of these points, it'll spark for them at one point.
We're over time. This is episode 1. I'm not sure how many people are going to listen to this unless this blows up.
For ourselves.
No, I know we're putting it out for us, but I'm just saying, if you've made it this far, I'll send you a T-shirt when we start making them, because my goodness, you're a true fan. One episode in. But last question: have you done any draft research? Have you looked at the draft at all?
Yeah, I've looked at it a little bit.
Okay, so I think it's pretty clear that Flag and Harper are going 1-2.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to ask you to project out what happens after, because it's stupid. But who's like your guy? And don't pick Ace Bailey or VJ Edgecombe, but like, who's your guy outside that top group who you'd be like, hey, you've got the 5th, 6th, 7th pick. This is who you should take.
Okay, so I haven't looked at enough of the players that would get me really excited, just because I know the Lakers don't have a chance at drafting them. Whereas going into the 2023 draft, that fucking terrible draft where they picked whatever his name is, but I looked at a bunch of guys that could score and stuff. So I'm missing a ton of guys that could be good that I haven't looked at. But I like Con Knuckle, bro, or Con Knuckle, however you pronounce his name. I think he's fucking nasty, bro. I think he's so good. And dude, listen, to me, he's like a bigger, stronger Austin Reeves. Maybe not as much wiggle. I think he could get downhill pretty easily. He's so fucking strong. And he's a sniper, bro. Like, the difference between him and someone like Austin Reeves is like, Austin Reeves is an okay shooter. I would say he's an average shooter. Really good free throw shooter, average shooter everywhere else. He's just more of a gamer shot maker. Con is just a fucking filthy shooter from everywhere. He's 90+% from the free throw line, 40+% from 3. He said he'd never shot mid-range before in high school. Like, never. I was listening to him get interviewed by KOC. He's like, I never shot that shot in my life. I'm like, how? So he started working on it. So he's gonna become a good mid-range shooter. He's big and he's 19. It's like everything AR gives you, except he's fucking 7 years younger. I just think he's incredible. I would make him a point guard. We'll see how he
make him a point guard.
Yeah, I think he's filthy, bro. I think he's.
But can he play make?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so you're really high on him. You're like, hey, this guy should be. Look, the way you're describing him, he should go number 3.
No, I don't know if I put. Well, it's so hard to project the athleticism stuff because I think he's big. He's got good size. He's like more 6'6" than 6'5", but I don't know. Like, I like Edgecombe. Because he's a dog, and when you're that type of special athlete and you're a dog, and then you and I both kind of like Ace Bailey, bro. I think
the Ace Bailey hate's overdone.
I agree.
Look, the thing about Ace, I'll talk about 2 players. The thing about, and I haven't done enough research on all these guys.
Yeah, I haven't researched a ton of guys.
But I'm just saying, when I look at Ace Bailey, I'm like, his ceiling is Carmelo Anthony. I'm like, I don't know how many guys in the draft you're evaluating that are like, this guy's ceiling is out of control. Like, Ace Bailey can score however way he wants to. And I'm not saying he's going to develop into this player, but he's got the minerals. He's got the raw talent to score from the outside at his height at a scary rate. And there just aren't guys that show. I mean, he's Michael Porter Jr. on steroids with fast twitch. And it's like, dude, like that's scary. And the other guy I mentioned is Igor Demin, who's at a BYU.
Yeah, he's interesting to me.
He was in Real Madrid's academy, and then he chose to do a year at BYU. And I like him because he's got the Euro style. And we were just talking about players that make other players better and kind of playmaking. And I don't think he's going to be a true point guard, but he's big enough. I think he's 6'9". So he can be like that point forward. He can't really shoot right now.
That's the problem. He can't shoot at all.
Elite floor vision. And he's a Euro guy, so he's gonna develop the shot. He's a freak. Like, all these Euro guys, they work so hard once they get into the NBA that I'm so much more confident in them figuring out their weaknesses than guys that come up through the AAU system and are chuckers and stuff like that. Like, I'm more confident that he develops the shot. So, and he's come up through the Real Madrid system and played a year at BYU. So he's played, some high level basketball at a younger age than I think most of these other guys in the draft. He'll be a pass first kind of big guy. I don't know exactly how he's going to play or where people really line him up as a 3, or if he puts on size, could be a 4. But he's getting drafted in like 8 to 12 range, 8 to 14 range, and to me, once you get to that part of the draft, you're trying to hit home runs. Where like, what's this guy's upside? Like, I like Demon a lot. I think he could be a really good player. So we'll see. You never know. You're playing the lottery after you get after a couple picks. I'm not as high on Harper as some other people. I'm higher on Bailey than other guys.
I'm not as high as Harper as well. He seems to be the consensus lock at 2. I don't know. It just doesn't. I'm worried about the shot. The shot looks really weird to me. But hey, who the fuck knows if the Spurs are the shot doctor team, right? So if they could fix the shot, then it changes everything. But
my thing too with the Spurs is they have to get off box. Like if they bring him in and they can't.
They just trade for him, and I think they probably agreed to like the bones of an extension with the age and stuff. So he's gonna get extended, bro. He may get traded after, but if they pay him
if I were the Spurs, I would get rid of this pick and just bring Giannis, dude. Giannis and Wemby, we need to do it. We need to see it. I need to see it. We need to see it.
I don't want to see it. I need to see LeBron and Luka get one. I can't.
I know, but I'm just saying Wemby and Giannis would just be an incredible experiment. Like it would just be. We wouldn't have seen anything like it really in the NBA.
I also want to see where the Duke big man Malawak. He seems pretty interesting. He was
really high on draft boards when I first was looking at mock draft, but he's fallen since.
Yeah, because he's raw, but he's a fucking freak, dude. I mean, I don't know, but
it's incredible that Duke didn't win this year.
They should have won. Actually, if they had just inbounded Con Knuppel. I keep fucking up his last name.
It's Con Knuppel.
Knuppel? Okay, yeah, Jesus. 0 for 4. But Con Knuppel posted up his guy 3 straight times on the inbounds. He did the NBA thing, which I was saying, which is just like, if they're not going to trap and it was just him one-on-one, just throw it to the angle. He's going to get it. He's going to knock down the free throws. And whoever was inbounding just didn't trust it enough and didn't throw that like jump ball to the angle. But Con did the right thing, and they didn't send help. And all they had to do was just have one of those inbounds go correctly, and they win. They should have won. That was brutal because that wasn't even like that is like a Duke choke. But in the past, when we've seen Duke teams lose, they get exposed for having actual weaknesses. That team had no weakness, dude. That game wasn't this is something Duke can't guard. It was literally Duke is by far the best team, and they just completely lost their minds and just didn't inbound the ball like 4 straight times.
I'm going to troll you here for a second because I keep saying last question.
Yeah, who cares?
Would you rather have Tyrese Haliburton or Cooper Flag?
I gotta go with Cooper Flag because he's 18, 19, the defense, the all around stuff. So, but that is crazy, right? That's also, I mean, Tyrese.
So you're saying that before he plays a game in the NBA, Cooper Flag is top 10 player.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. But that's not what it is. Yeah, but that's not what it is. Is I'm getting him at 18, 19. That's
I would also take Cooper Flag if it means anything to you.
But it is crazy to think about that as a thought exercise because you're not saying that he's better than Tyrese right now, but you are saying like it's
Tyrese, you're projecting out the contract and the growth and the potential, and
but it's like Tyrese is 25, so you're also kind of saying like, man, you're thinking that this guy is going to be better, is going to easily be a top 10 guy. So it's fucking hard to know, but
we're gonna have plenty of time to talk about all this because the NBA offseason is going to be wild, and we'll talk about different things on different pods. Right? But I mean, we're going to be podding a bunch. And we'll pod and we'll talk about different things. It won't just be NBA; it'll be NFL or anything else that's coming up in the landscape. But sorry,
maybe some Diddy stuff.
No, I heard you. I said sorry because man, that's just. But I hope everyone who's listening, if you made it an hour and 50 minutes,
it's crazy.
I hope you enjoyed episode 1. If we're famous 3 years from now and you're trying to figure out what episode 1 sounded like, just know that this was just as bare bones as it's going to get. So I'm glad we could give you a couple of hours of content, and looking forward for episode 2. So thanks for the time, Chen.
Yeah, catch you guys later.
No notes.